Hey guys, what's happening and welcome back to our channel. Call us crazy, but we wouldn't want to watch the death of a friend or family member or an assault case made into a musical. And what would be the point of it? And does the world need a Making a Murderer musical anyway? Let's have a look. Number 5, who is Brendan Dassey? We don't think any of us would want to witness a family member's murder or physical assault made into a musical. But here we are, it appears, as everyone engaged in the clown show that is Stephen Avery's life will now be subjected to a song and dance narrative about it all, as if the documentary wasn't enough. It's the type of morbid stuff you'd expect from a Game of Thrones episode than the year of 2021, but when you consider how many people would choose money above empathy, it all makes a little more sickening sense. Making a Murderer was a successful true crime documentary series that detailed the story of Stephen Avery's unjust conviction for raping Penny Berenson. Avery was exonerated after serving 18 years in jail, only to be caught and convicted 4 years later for the murder of Teresa Halbach. Regardless of Avery's guilt or innocence, the entire case was littered with dubious law enforcement practices. Brendan Dassey, Avery's nephew, who is doing time for being an accomplice to murder, but appears to have been forced into admitting was a major element of the story and had some real disgusting lawyer representation. That seems to have piqued the interest of the musical's creators, who claim that their show will examine these actual events through a satirical lens to highlight how a justice system has been so compromised, yet can still be allowed to continue to use its powers to victimize the weak and vulnerable. They also call it a classical Shakespearean story and a twisted fairy tale, which sounds nothing like the original explanation, but hey, the juice sells. Brendan Dassey is a 32-year-old convicted felon serving a life term at the Oshkosh Correctional Facility on charges of mutilation of a body, second-degree physical assault, and first-degree homicide. His lawyers claim that Dassey, who has a borderline low IQ, was pressured into falsely confessing to the homicide of 25-year-old photographer Teresa Halbach by law enforcement officials, and that his case has become a symbol of the deeply corrupt prison justice system as a result of the 2016 Netflix documentary Making a Murderer. Dassey, on the other hand, is a bookish, unassuming pop folk tenor who can belt as much as an 8/4 on the planet of Making a Murderer the musical. Number 4, Making a Murderer the musical. Dassey's character description is described in the casting notice for Making a Murderer the musical, a production showcase now in development at London Soho Theatre. Making a Murderer the musical, written by BBC sitcom writer Phil Mealy and directed by James Baker, who has also directed Jason Robert Brown's Parade and the Jerry the Springer Opera, is described on its website as a basic Shakespearean story and a twisted fairy tale, an adaptation of the Netflix collection that tells the story of Dassey and his uncle Stephen Avery is convicted concerning Halbach's homicide. Avery has also filed many legal challenges to his homicide conviction, but he is still incarcerated. Prosecutor Kathleen Zellner, described as a mezzo-soprano with a strong belt with gravitas and actual main girl standing, and Thomas Fassbender, the former Calumet County, Wisconsin police officer, accused of coercing Dassey's confession. According to the casting director, the actor playing Fassbender should be 5'9" or shorter and should audition for a track like Cop Tune from Urinetown. Number 3, but this isn't happening for the first time. According to the casting notice, the production is intended to look at these precise occasions via a satirical lens to focus on how a justice system has been so compromised but can nonetheless be allowed to proceed to make use of its powers to victimize the weak and the susceptible. The idea of adapting a real-life crime into the musical layout is not exactly new. Stephen Sondheim's Assassin takes a sardonic look at American jingoism through the lens of real-life presidential assassins like John Hinckley and John Wilkes Salespace, while the aforementioned Parade tells the story of the lynching of Leo Frank. In the early 20th century, A Jewish man was accused of assaulting and killing a 13-year-old industrial facility employee. But despite the musical's implicit satirical lens and the fact that most of the main characters in Making a Murderer, most prominently Hellback's family, are still alive and well, many on social media have spoken out against it, prompting the original casting agency Maven Casting and Associates to quietly take down the original casting discover, though it's still accessible on the Wayback Machine. Maven acknowledged in an email that it had been engaged to forge a few roles within the forthcoming workshop of this piece at the Soho Theatre, London, but also mentioned that the production would be put on hold until the spring because the piece is again in growth. Baker, the show's director, also verified that Making the Murderer the musical was still in the works through Twitter, although he declined to elaborate. The author, Millie, hadn't responded by press time. Number 2, does crime content make people feel comfortable? Jessica Dean, 25, who goes by the TikTok handle at Bloodbath Beyond, was the first to see the casting notice for Making the Murderer the musical. Dean has aimed at true crime shows and the commodification of tragedy on YouTube and TikTok on her website, and she tells Rolling Stone that she discovered the Making a Murderer the musical after seeing it linked in replies to a tweet by activist and author Wagatwe Wanyuki, who had posted her criticism of Tiger King 2 on Twitter. Dean accuses the creative team behind Making the Murderer the musical of abusing Hellbock's recollection in her video. May you think about your daughter, the one you love. Your sister will get murdered brutally, very publicly. All of the gory particulars are on the market for everyone to only maw over. May you think about that changing into the idea of a musical 15 years later, she asks in the video. Adding of Hellbock, her household remains to be alive. Is that one of the simplest ways we wish to do that? Dean, who only lives a few counties away from where Hellbock was slain, told Rolling Stone that she didn't like the one-of-a-kind Making a Murderer collection, which she found extraordinarily one-sided in Avery's favor. However, she claims that even if the musical production is supposed to mock the criminal justice system, she doesn't find it particularly pleasant. I feel like true crime content material typically has made folks so comfy with the commercialization and blatant entertainment fiction of real-life tragedies, she adds. If this man Avery is harmless, he's being punished, so why would you flip his struggling right into a musical? Should you be invested in getting him justice? Is a musical one of the simplest ways to go about it? Number 1, is it okay to be profiting from someone's loss? But hey, isn't this the type of entertainment that people seem to want? So what's the point of stopping now? Let's produce a musical on Brock Turner, who assaulted Chanel Miller and was only sentenced to 3 months in prison. We're sure the victims' relatives and survivors wouldn't mind having their suffering being dressed up in heels and makeup and dancing about on stage while shouting their hearts out. Never mind that Teresa Hellback's family has been begging people since the first season of Making a Murderer to stop making entertainment and profiting from their grief. We don't know when Brendan will be released, because, unless his attorneys are successful in winning his early release, Dassey will not be eligible for parole until 2048, which is when he'd be over 60 years old. Do leave your honest thoughts about a possible Making a Murderer musical in the comments down below, and whether you guys think it's a good idea or just the opposite. And as always, I'll catch you guys later in another video. Bye now!